Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the biggest challenges that we've got in agriculture is weed control. And when you get into certain crops, there are fewer options to choose from. We'll talk about dry beans today and give you some options that could take out those tough to control weeds.
We also want to discuss an issue that's really been creeping up here in the last 20 years. It's nutrient stratification. Do you have the problem on your farm? And if so, what can you do about it?
I thought the problem you were going to talk about is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show. But first, here's our Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
One of the best parts about farming in the northern part of the country is it gets really cold. No, I know, not for human beings is this good, but it's awesome for our soil. We want to talk today about the freeze-thaw activity and the benefit to agriculture.
You're right, Brian. Freezing temperatures are pretty cool. When you think about soils, soils are not just dirt. They're actually comprised of air and water and dirt. And that water portion is what we're really concerned about out on the farm. For water, it actually contracts as it goes down in temperature until it gets to about 4 degrees Celsius. Then it starts to expand, and after freezing, it expands by another 9%. And it's that expansion of frozen water that we're concerned about today.
All right, so farmers often talk about this freeze-thaw activity in soil, and the main reason why is to break up compaction. Now, to some degree, it can do that, and we'll talk a little more about that. But first, I guess I just wanted to talk about the big benefit that I see with freezing temperatures. That is, it kills some of the pests that are in our field. For example, diseases. A lot of them can't survive really cold temperatures. Bugs can't survive really cold temperatures. And even for that matter, weeds, we're at least going to kill some of the tough weeds that we have on the farm because they can't handle super cold temperatures. Or at least if they were damaged in the fall, they get finished off. They get winter kill, as we call it, because of those cold temperatures. So a lot of benefits just from the agronomic side. But let's talk also about that compaction with the freeze-thaw.
When soil gets smashed together and compacted, like say underneath where a tractor tire ran, farmers are often concerned about how do I deal with that compaction layer? Do I need to do tillage, or will something else help me to break the compaction up? When we look at this freeze-thaw effect, the expansion of that water once it freezes is a big deal because the water particles that get right in there with that compacted soil can help to break up some compaction. Now, when we look at compaction that is vertical and it's a tire pressed down and there's a vertical layer of compaction, when that compacted soil expands out, eventually when it thaws back out and falls down, you can have some breakup of compaction. But it's the horizontal compaction across that really has a tough time. When you get water expansion and it lifts it up, eventually when that soil starts to thaw back out, it just settles right back the way it was. So we don't get a significant amount of compaction breakdown from the freeze-thaw effect.
All right, so the freeze-thaw effect, as a farmer, I love it. I think it's great. As a human being, I don't like being out in that cold weather, but I just understand when I do get those really cold temps, especially when I have open ground with no snow cover so that freeze can get way down deep into the soil, that's a really good thing for me and for my crops.
One other thing that's good for crops is knocking out our weed of the week. We'll show you how to do it coming up later in the show.
We moved away from Roundup, and we moved into Liberty. We were probably some of the first ones to do that here. And then people would ask, how come your beans look so good? And how come they're so clean? Well, I guess you can blame Stein for that, and Liberty. It's a good product. And my beans yields have been growing every year that I've been planning the Liberty program. Liberty has been awesome for us. I choose Stein because Stein has yield.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
Side dressing nitrogen? Applying nitrogen over the row boosts nitrogen uptake and efficiency. 360 Y-Drop places nitrogen at the base of the plant, not like Coulter systems that put it down the center of the row. With Y-Drop, a small amount of moisture moves nitrogen into the root zone for rapid uptake. Getting more bushels out of your nitrogen investment is important. 360 Y-Drop lets you apply nitrogen later in the season so you know exactly how much N is needed to finish the crop strong. Learn more at 360yieldcenter.com.
One of the biggest yield limiting factors on farms is even crop emergence, and only one closing wheel will get your growing season started right. Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheels from Copperhead Ag are proven to yield better than standard rubber tire and cast iron closing wheels in all conditions. With yield gains that give you a return on investment the first season, there's no reason to run a standard closing system again. Visit copperheadag.com today to get your 2017 growing season started right.
As weed resistance becomes more of a problem across the country, your crop protection program needs to stay flexible to be effective. Hypro Innovative Spray Technology's wide selection of spray tips and nozzle configurations are available to keep your crop protection program right on technology, right on target.
One of the crops we don't talk often about here on Ag PhD is dry beans. So today we wanted to kind of go through production from start to finish.
All right, let's start from the beginning. Let's start with soil fertility. When you look at dry beans, it's a crop that has a high demand for nutrients, and if you're short on some of these nutrients, it can negatively impact you in yield very quickly. N, P, and K are kind of an obvious, and everybody looks at N, P, and K. But don't forget about how much calcium and sulfur that you need, and also micronutrients. So we suggest doing a complete soil test and then looking at the Ag PhD fertilizer removal app to see exactly how many of these nutrients that you need so you don't run short.
Probably the biggest thing I would say on fertility is make sure your potassium levels are high. A lot of people underestimate how much dry beans and soybeans, all those bean crops, can use in terms of potassium.
Seed treatment is the next thing, and it's an absolute must, especially with a crop that really doesn't have the varietal tolerance to a lot of the diseases that some of the other things like corn or soybeans would have, just due to the breeding and the number of acres that dry beans are on compared to those other crops. So make sure you're doing what you can with the seed treatment to protect yourself from disease and also from insects where appropriate.
We also recommend pre-emerge herbicides. You've got Spartan Charge, you've got the yellows like Sonalan or Prowl. So yeah, we don't have quite as many options as we do in some of these other crops, but if you had a yellow plus Spartan Charge, boy, you've got awfully good pre-emerge weed control.
Now for top yields, you have to manage stresses as they come along during the season. You have to anticipate when things are coming like hot weather or drought or those types of things, but also insect outbreaks and disease outbreaks. We've seen some really big yield boosts where guys have protected their crop with fungicides and also with insecticide applications very early. Don't wait until they blow up in a field.
Yeah, let's get real specific here. In terms of diseases, you got to be ahead of things on this dry bean deal. Just like Darren said, white mold is probably the worst disease problem that most farmers will fight. All right, you could start pre-emerge using some contans if you have a history of white mold, but otherwise what we're talking about is using post-emerge treatments. There are things like Endura and Proline. There are many different fungicides. Just check for the ones that are labeled in your area, but look at specifically white mold, but then definitely other diseases as well.
All right, now post-emerge weed control. We talked about the pre. Never skip that pre-emerge program in dry beans, otherwise you're going to be behind the eight ball the rest of the season. There are some post-emerge choices that are decent. In the past we used to use Result. Now that's been replaced by Varisto, which should be a better program for broadleaf weed control on your farm. You look at things like Reflex that can be used depending on what geography you're raising the dry beans in.
Well, very specifically, if you've got water hemp, Palmer pigweed, even ragweed, that Reflex is going to be your best bet.
And really that broadleaf component is number one, because with grass we have lots of choices for grass control, post-emerge, just like we do in soybeans.
Probably our key message here is dry beans respond to good management. Now, if there are some of these things we've talked about that you haven't been doing, we certainly encourage you, try them on a few acres. Prove it to yourself and then do it across a bunch of acres. You know, whether it's using a pre-emerge herbicide, whether it's using fungicides, and especially late in the season, don't give up too early on that dry bean crop. With dry beans, just like with soybeans, they make a lot of their yield late in the year. So we really care about July, about August, sometimes even early September, depending on what part of the country you're from.
Well, fortunately in dry beans, we don't very often see our weed of the week, but you will see it in other areas around your farm. Can you identify this week's weed?
Everything in here has been exactly what they said it was going to be. I just wouldn't build anything but a morning.
When the crew showed up, the building went up in seemed like days.
The process couldn't have been easier. There was no "I'll need to get back with you." It was instantaneous.
From beginning to end, the job is well done, the building is excellent, and highly recommend Morton Buildings.
Now's the time to save during Building Value Days. Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
In life, when you put the max in, you get the max out. It's no different for your corn, which is why 40 years of effort have gone into proving that Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers do more than just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize nitrogen, so your corn gives you the max in return.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep as well as install 3 or 4 inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
One of the biggest challenges in agriculture over the last 20 years is nutrient stratification. Well, how did this nutrient stratification get to be such a big deal? And it didn't used to be. A lot of it has to do with reduced tillage, with no-till. Because you think about how are you putting fertilizer on your ground? For most farmers, they're broadcast applying, or even if they're banding, it's only going a couple inches deep. Well, what nutrient stratification is it basically means, hey, we've got a whole bunch of nutrients in the top 2 or 3 inches and not much below that. That's a real problem.
Okay, a couple things here, Brian. When we look at tilling in nutrients, how deep are those nutrients actually getting? Many farmers are mistakenly under the impression that, hey, if I'm doing tillage at 10 inches deep and I broadcast my fertilizer on top, I'm going to move all that fertilizer down 10 inches deep. No, you're really not. You're going to move it about half the depth of the tillage. So a majority of that is going to be in that upper half of whatever you're tilling. A lot of tillage operations are running at 6 to 8 inches deep, so we're getting our fertilizer in the top 3 or 4 inches, that's it. So we aren't getting that fertilizer placement down deep even when guys are doing conventional tillage.
All right, here's what we want you to do. identify if you've even got an issue. You're probably doing a good job soil testing on your farm, but what we want you to do in addition to that is just take a few spots and go every 3 inches down all the way to 24 inches deep. It's not going to cost you that much money because you're only going to pick a few spots on your whole farm. But this will at least give you a general idea, where is your fertilizer at? What we find with a lot of reduced till and no-till farmers is the vast majority is in the top 3 inches, and then below that, the next 21 inches, there's almost nothing there. And the big problem, and the reason why this is such an issue, is just think of what percentage of your roots are down below 3 inches deep. It's a huge percentage. And then also, what happens in a drier year or just in a dry time of the year? The top 3 inches dries out. Well, how do nutrients get into the plant? They get in with water. You may have water down at a foot deep or 2 feet deep, and you have roots down there, but if you don't have some nutrients, you're not going to have top yields.
What you don't see down deep when you don't have the nutrients there is you don't see a lot of root hair proliferation. So you do see some roots going down trying to find water and nutrients. However, when they don't find enough nutrients, the root hair growth is just very, very limited on those parts of the root.
All right, once you've identified you've got a problem, now you got to try to fix it. Like Darren said, you can do some tillage. You can do some deeper tillage if you want to. What some people have done is they've gone in and they've used a deep ripper and they've rolled the ground. You definitely can do that, but one of the challenges with that is, like for us where we farm, we only have maybe 4 to 6 inches of topsoil in many cases. So are you really going to stir subsoil up with the topsoil? That's probably not real great. So then what do? Well, in a lot of cases, you can just simply inject nutrients deeper. That's kind of what we've gone to in some of our shallow soils, because we don't want to stir everything up like that. We just take, either with a strip till machine or some other type of deep machine, just injecting nutrients down into the 8 to 12 inch level. We've even taken a deep zone builder, like a Brilliant Zone Commander, and taken manure, put it down 20 inches deep in the ground. This absolutely can be done. Yep, I know it requires a lot of horsepower, it's a little more work, a little bit more expensive, but you know what? It pays off in the long run if you can get your soil profile more even, get more nutrients down deeper in the ground. And the other big thing is, once you get nutrients down there, you have more root growth down there, so eventually you have more organic matter and just more overall soil life.
The other thing is crop rotation, or even using cover crops, trying to get deep-rooted crops to try to bring some nutrients down. As those deep-rooted crops grow down, once that plant material starts to decay and break down, you end up with channels for air to get down, for water to get down. You've got a food source there for all the soil microbes. That can be a good way to start moving some of that fertilizer down, but it's not going to move it down as fast as what tillage does, or just changing up your placement options.
We do think nutrient stratification is a huge issue, and it might be a major problem for you on your farm. So just identify it and try to get it fixed, get it managed as best you can if you want higher yields going forward.
One other thing that will help improve your yields is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Each week here on the show, we've got a different weed that we feature. We call it the Weed of the Week. And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, I hate seeing the Weed of the Week because I think, oh man, that's a tough one to control. We got to step through all these options. This week's weed is bull thistle, and I don't think it's all that difficult to control. It just takes a little bit of diligence. You got to get out there and get it taken care of before it goes to seed.
All right, there are a lot of methods used for bull thistle control that are really kind of ineffective. Let's take a few of them. For example, let's just say you got a hoe and you chop off the top of a bull thistle. Well, you just set it back for a couple of weeks, it's coming back. How about mowing? Same thing. You mow it off, it comes back within a couple of weeks. You're really not being very effective. The other thing is using 2,4-D. If you use a low rate of 2,4-D, maybe a quart to 4-pound 2,4-D and spray it over an acre of grassland, and you've got some bull thistle, you can burn them down to the ground, but you don't have enough active ingredient to get down into that root, nor do you have the right product to get down in that root. So you've got to look at what the right timing is and the right product if you really want to get it under control.
The good news here is it's just a biennial weed. It is not a perennial. So since it is a biennial, the whole key is in year 2, preventing it from going to seed. Year 1 is basically going to be the rosette stage. You're going to see it relatively close to the ground. It's just trying to store up nutrients to go into the next year. And then in year 2, you're going to have the bolt stage where that bull thistle is going to get tall. It's going to put a great big head on it, a big flower. And the reason why Darren mentioned low rates of 2,4-D is a lot of times you don't really notice bull thistle until year 2, where you go, oh my goodness, what's this great big weed out there? Well, it's so big, so thick, so powerful that that little rate of 2,4-D isn't going to do a whole lot to it.
All right, so what will work on it? Well, one product that's really old that is pretty effective on thistles is Tordon. Tordon can certainly be used to wipe out a thistle patch, and it can get down into that root system if you use a high enough rate. Now, one of the challenges with Tordon has been, well, there's several challenges. One, you can't get close to a river or a stream. And if you've got a little stream running through your pasture, you got to stay back because Tordon can be harmful for fish. The other thing it's dangerous for is trees. So if you've got a tree belt or some desirable trees around the area where the bull thistles are, Tordon is going to be a little iffy for you.
All right, the better product than Tordon is going to be Milestone. Milestone is more effective on all thistle species than really anything else that you've got for the non-crop areas. All right, Darren mentioned 2,4-D and said, you know, low rate, not very good. But if you went out with, let's say, a quart to a quart and a half of LV6 in good weather conditions, and there isn't already a head on that plant, you're going to have pretty decent effectiveness. So what ends up happening a lot of times, though, is the weather's adverse, the weather's cold, the rate isn't very good, the plant is already too big, it already has a head on. So I'm just trying to say, if you time it right, use a stronger rate of maybe a more concentrated 2,4-D, you actually can do pretty decent on this weed.
All right, now if that plant already has a seed head on it, we get the question all the time, well, hey, if I spray it now, can I hurt the germination or the viability of those seeds? Well, certainly you can to some degree, but will you 100%? I wouldn't count on that. You want to get your timing so you're doing it a little bit earlier than that. The other thing, if you say, hey, I don't use chemicals on my farm, what can I do to stop this weed? Well, a couple things. Number one, don't overgraze grass areas. When you overgraze, what happens is you just took away all that crop canopy, and now that thistle has virtually nothing to compete against. The other thing is good fertility. If you're not fertilizing your pastures, you really need to start looking at this. And I know if you're in an organic production, you say, well, I can't use commercial fertilizers. That's fine. You can use manure. You can use compost. There are a number of different nutrient programs you can get on. You need to make sure that your grass has all the nutrients it needs so it never suffers, so you never have a chance for something competitive like bull thistle to come in.
The other thing, if you want better canopy, use something like Rise Up Smart Grass, gibberellic acid. Early in the spring, late in the fall, you're going to get a lot more growth in the cooler weather conditions, and that's often when bull thistle can really get established.
Well, that's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week. Bull thistle, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
When you think about it, productivity starts at planting. So it's time to rethink how productive your planter can be. We did with the new Case IH 2000 Series Early Riser Planter. We rethought your row unit so it's tougher, more accurate. We rethought your meter, took the most precise technology, factory installed it. We rethought every inch of the Case IH Early Riser Planter to make it the most productive planter around. And if you think about it, that's exactly what you want.
Sometimes getting the yield you want means you need a whole new game plan. Think about it. When the older, conventional fertilizer you've been using goes head-to-head with tough soil conditions, they can get all tied up before they ever have a chance to score. That's when it's time to regroup. Time to send in the A-Team. AgroLiquid isn't like other fertilizers. Their nutrient-balanced products stay in the soil in the right formulations, in just the right amounts. And because of AgroLiquid's unique chelation technology, you wind up using less and seeing more in your yields. So you could wind up having one heck of a championship season. Make a smart start with AgroLiquid. To find the closest nutrient coach near you, visit agroliquid.com.
It doesn't matter what you grow, corn, wheat, sorghum, soybeans, even cotton, peanuts, or specialty crops. Commodity Classic is the one ag event you should attend this year, because investing a couple of days at Commodity Classic pays big dividends on your farm all year long. Commodity Classic is America's largest convention and trade show run by farmers for farmers. That means you get an experience unlike any other farm show. Top-notch education, the newest technology, equipment, and ideas, the opportunity to learn from other great farmers, a little entertainment, and a chance to relax a bit in beautiful San Antonio. You don't have to be a member of a commodity association to attend Commodity Classic. All you need is a passion for farming, a thirst for knowledge, and a desire to become an even better farmer. So farmer up!
Farmer up!
Farmer up! Farmer up!
Farmer up!
And join thousands of other farmers from across the nation March 2nd through 4th at the 2017 Commodity Classic in San Antonio. Discover more at commodityclassic.com.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
What kind of spreader does it take to spread lime? We'll answer that question in today's Iron Talk. The agricultural use of lime sure seems to be on the rise based on conversations I've had with farmers this winter. Raising a low pH back up into the 6s has been a great return on investment on farms across the country. Even in areas where liming has not historically been a common practice, farmers are embracing it now due to the positive impacts on yield that they're seeing. The other reason liming is on the rise is simply to build the calcium levels in various soils, whether it's to loosen up a tight, high magnesium clay soil or to balance out fertility levels in general. Calcium, and especially lime, is in high demand. Unfortunately, you need a lime spreader to get the job done. The chain and paddle drive on a regular spinner spreader will not be able to move the product unless you're using pelletized lime, of course. For most farms, it may mean hiring someone to spread the lime. On our farm, we're using water treatment plant lime from a nearby city who had contracted a professional to spread the lime for people like us. Now we're hearing livestock manure spreaders with vertical beaters can be used as well if managed closely. No matter how you do it, accurately spreading lime can be a big benefit for the right soils. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
We hope you've enjoyed our show today. If you're looking for more agronomic information, we know you would also enjoy the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on SiriusXM Channel 147.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Did you realize that a healthy soil only contains about 50% dirt? In order for the soil microbes and plants to work together properly, soil should contain 25% air and 25% water. Today's farming practices are designed around maintaining that healthy balance. To learn more, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.